What's going on, everyone? Bran here, and you're about to get the Bloody Breakdown. The Bloody Breakdown on what you may say, well, I'm going to break down everything we know about the upcoming Netflix Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So yeah, this is definitely a film franchise that needs to knock one out of the park. If I've said it once, I've said it a million times. I'm really hoping that, given some of the red flags I've seen behind this one, I'm really remaining optimistic that this thing turns out to be at least a somewhat interesting and unique entry in the franchise. So let's talk about it, why don't we? So overall, this is indeed the 9th entry in the Texas Chainsaw franchise. It is a direct sequel to the 1974 original, so we're going Halloween route here, we're going the Candyman route here, whether you want to call that a legacy sequel, a spiritual sequel, or a requel, I guess is the new term being utilized for these types of films. And also, it's going to be released on February the 18th, which is coming up in less than a month here on Netflix. Now, this thing was originally slated for a theatrical release, but and I believe this was in 2021, but with theaters closing due to COVID and a lot of other factors being taken into consideration, this thing was finally slated for a release on Netflix, and that's going to happen February the 18th. So, how did we get here? So, going back to the last entry in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise, back when Lionsgate still owned the rights, and they had produced a little film called Leatherface, the more recent one. To be more specific, in 2017. So at that point in time, Lionsgate had already planned for 5 more Texas Chainsaw films. However, during the time it took to release Leatherface, Lionsgate lost the rights and Legendary Pictures acquired said rights. Now, pretty much the entire cast and crew came together slowly after that, with the exception of a couple of original directors that actually didn't end up being attached to the project. That would be Ryan and Andy Tohill, who were set to direct and were on set doing so, but left 1 week into production, citing creative differences. Ooh, that's one of those red flags I was talking about. So, let's jump in real quick before we talk about those directors and the cast and crew. Let's talk about the synopsis behind this movie that we've been given. It reads as follows. Melody, her teenage sister Lila, and their friends Dante and Ruth head to the remote town of Harlow, Texas to start an idealistic new business venture. But their dream soon turns into a walking nightmare when they accidentally disrupt the home of Leatherface, the deranged serial killer whose blood-soaked legacy continues to haunt the area's residents, including Sally Hardesty, the sole survivor of the infamous 1973 massacre, who's hell-bent on seeking revenge. Now, I don't know why they put 73 in there. I don't know if that was a typo, because that's, directly reading the plot synopsis, or if they're trying to insinuate the actual events of the film took place a year before the release of the film. Which I guess if they're still going with this based on a true story thing, and it's not just an Ed Gein knockoff, sure, whatever. So, we've got a core group here apparently coming to this new town, or this new to them town, and we're going to be bringing back Sally Hardesty. That's the thing that I'm really interested the most about here, is the Sally Hardesty character returning to the franchise for the first time since the original. That has me more excited as a fan of this franchise and as a fan of the original than anything else. Not really sure how I'm going to feel about these new characters. Time will tell, but Sally, that's one I'm definitely interested to see. So, I mentioned we're going to talk about the crew. Let's talk about the crew real quick. This thing is going to be directed by David Blue Garcia. Your screenplay came to you courtesy of Chris Thomas Devlin. And of course, our story and producer comes from Fede Alvarez, which he was one of the first names I saw attached to this project. There was some rumblings he may be directing this thing. That's not going to be the case, especially after the Tohill step down. But no, that's not going to be the case. He did come up with the overall story and will be serving as a producer. So all you Fede Alvarez fans, he definitely has a he's definitely put his spin, his ideas into this story, considering he was the one who crafted the story to begin with. So I'm really interested to see what Fede Alvarez, especially after the treatment that we got with the Evil Dead remake, or reboot, however you want to put it, back in, I believe, 2013. That was a fantastic film, and it's really hard, for me at least, to really fall into that remake, reboot type era they were in the 2010s, early 2010s. But I think they did a really good job of that one. Now, moving on to the actual cast of characters here. We have Mark Burnham, who is going to be portraying Leatherface. And they kind of give you like a character breakdown, so to speak, here, so I'll read that off as well. It says, the one behind all the massacres in the stories. Leatherface is a mentally unstable mass murderer. His name is derived from the human skin mask that he wears. His signature weapon is a chainsaw, but he also uses other tools to murder his victims. He has been underground for nearly 50 years until he gets disrupted by the arrival of new people in town. So, kind of the idea going forward here with Leatherface. Once again, this is a legacy sequel, a requel, so we're ignoring everything that came after the original. This is just your direct follow-up, giving it the Texas Chainsaw 3D treatment once again. Hopefully it works out a little bit better this time. But apparently Leatherface has been underground for nearly 50 years since the original film. So it's going to be interesting to see what happened to his brothers. It's going to be interesting to see, where the rest of the family may have gotten off to, why he ended up in the situation to be underground. So now moving on, we have Olwen Fuer, who's going to be playing Sally Hardesty, because as we all know, the original Sally Hardesty, Marilyn Burns, passed away several years back. But to give you the little character details here, it says the leading character of the 1974 movie, who is the only survivor of the first massacre. Now it's interesting they say first massacre in the details here, considering everything else isn't canon in this current timeline, but I'll digress. After Leatherface kills her entire family, Sally is captured and tortured by him, but somehow manages to escape. Sally is now old, but is seeking vengeance for her family, obviously played by Marilyn Burns in the original film. That's the character that I'm really looking forward to. I'm kind of hoping we get to at least have some kind of at least quasi Jamie Lee Michael Myers moment with these two, because these characters even predate Michael and Laurie as characters. So I have my fingers crossed we get something really cool and interesting from the Sally Hardesty character as it relates to Leatherface. So moving on down here, we have Sarah Yarkin, who plays Melody, a young entrepreneur from San Francisco who comes to Harlow with a plan to start a business. That kind of seems to be the overall arc here with these younger characters. They're pretty much just moving to a small town. Maybe it's cheaper to buy up property there, buy up buildings there, and looks like they're going to be starting a new business. So we're going to see where that goes in the film and how that plays into everything. Elsie Fisher plays Lila, Melody's teenage sister. She is a hobby photographer and uses a wheelchair. So I'm seeing a lot of parallels with this Lila character to the original film and some other characters. Being a photographer, photography has always kind of been one of those things, even getting down to the sound that old school cameras would make, processing an image, being etched into this franchise. So I think that's pretty cool. And she is wheelchair bound, so that's definitely harkening back to the character of Franklin, Sally's brother from the original film. Kind of a callback in more ways than one this Lila character is, at least in my estimation. So Jacob Lattimore plays Dante, a close friend of Melody and Lila's, who also comes to Harlow with them. He has a girlfriend who is also a friend of the sisters. And to kind of round out the rest of the cast here, we have Mo Dunford as Richter, Alice Krieg as Miss Mack, Nell Hudson as Ruth, Sam Douglas as Herb, William Hope as Sheriff Hathaway, and Joylyn Coy as an unmentioned role. So that kind of rounds out the rest of your cast of characters here. And that kind of brings us full circle here. That's pretty much everything we know going into this film. We have our cast set, we have our crew set, we have a plot synopsis. And we've got a lot of details really heading into this thing. But I got to be real with you. Like I said at the beginning of this video, I'm not even going to sugarcoat this. I'm not going to dance around it. This movie really, and I mean really, needs to be at least a serviceable and fun, well done entry in the franchise. And I'm going to tell you why, because much in the same vein of Hellraiser, I think it's been a long time since this franchise has really had that movie that you can say it's fun, it's interesting, it's a wild ride, it's well made, and it has that replay value. I don't think we got that from Leatherface back in 2017. I don't think we got that for Texas Chainsaw 3D. It's really been a long time, and I'll say, even Texas Chainsaw the beginning, going back to one further than that, it's got good kills, pretty brutal, but other than that, it's really not very memorable to me. So I would say, in my own opinion, it's been about since 2003 when they did the original remake of Texas Chainsaw that this has really had a good entry. So we're coming up on 19 years since this thing has really had something that I think at least most horror fans would agree on was actually pretty good. And that's where we are. And I think this one, whereas right now I'd say I'm hit or miss on this thing. I'm still on the fence. I'm being positive about it for the simple fact that I enjoy the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I'm really excited to see Sally Hardesty as a character back. But there are some red flags as far as like some of the younger cast, not necessarily the cast, but their characters. And just who is the good guy, who is the bad guy here. It kind of seems in some ways like we're meant to cheer for Leatherface as he takes on some of these younger characters, but then you have the Sally character who I'm going to be sympathetic to, so there are some red flags here for me as far as the story goes, but we don't know until we see the film, and that's where I am right now. And given all the information we have, I am remaining positive. I'm remaining optimistic, which isn't something that I typically do. I'm pretty skilled pessimist, let's say that. So there you go, there you have it. That's all we know right now about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, coming to Netflix on February the 18th. I'm super excited about it. And once again, fingers crossed. I think this franchise needs a really good entry, and I really hope this is the one, especially, attached to people like Fede Alvarez. So yeah, I guess that's going to be about it. Ladies and gents, leave me your thoughts down below in the comments section. Leave a like if you've enjoyed the video. Subscribe. Turn on notifications if you like what we're doing here at Bloody Breakdown. And if you really like what we're doing, why don't you go ahead and become a member by clicking that join button. So, with that said, I'm Bran, and you just got the Bloody Breakdown.